Hey guys, I'm back here with you again. Today we're going to go back into the audio device series, and I was going to go over the auto pan in this tutorial. Also, just besides going over just what everything does in this auto pan, after I was going to kind of show you, I just put this together. I'm working on turning this into a song, but just how I would use the auto pan with a specific sound, because a lot of the times I use the auto pan for kind of making like hypnotic stuff and like flowing it to the background. So for example, like I have it on here, and I'm also kind of using it with the auto filter as well, which is also panning, but together they kind of make an interesting sound. So just to show you, and then all together, so I use the auto pan a lot with like hypnotic sounds like that. It's a great way to kind of have it float around. It creates space, and it also it allows you to keep stuff out of the way of each other, and it creates more room within your song, because I have like a bass too in there that it would be competing with if I didn't otherwise have the auto filter on there. So it kind of just floats around the bass line. But I can kind of go into it a little bit deeper after we go over the auto filter, but I just want to get going with this. So I have a very basic synth setup here. It is very basic and kind of ugly, but it's just to get the point across on how this works. So just to hear it with the auto pan off, there we go. So it's just straight across saw wave, and that's all you hear. So the first thing on the auto filter is the amount, which essentially is like basically the dry wet setting. So 0, you're just going to hear the sound normally, and then all the way up at 100, you're only going to hear the affected signal or the panning signal, and then 50% is going to be half the dry, and then half of the wet. It's more subtle, and pretty much anything in between is a variation between 0 and 100. So that's it for that setting on that one. There is, like I've done in the other tutorials, there's a rate setting, and the rate can either be in hertz, or it can be synced to your track, and it'll go into beats. So you have, what is it, set to 3 bars right now, 3/8, etc. So you can kind of hear, or you go to your synced type. So that's it for that section. This is going to be pretty quick. The auto pan's a pretty simple plugin, but again, I use it a lot. So I just kind of wanted to go over and show you guys how it works in case there was something you didn't understand. Now, we've also gone over this on the auto filter and a couple other plugins in this series, the phase. So basically, it works just like the rest of them. I'll go up to a little higher one. If it's 180 degrees out of phase, the left and the right are going to be opposite of each other. So if you turn it all the way down to 0, or you turn it all the way up to 100, it's basically just going to turn. It's kind of just like almost like a volume envelope. And then anything in between is just going to, so if you start with 180, you can get some interesting stuff. That kind of that setting right there sounds like it's kind of almost spinning, especially if you have headphones on. Like I have headphones on right now, so it might not be as prevalent when you're in your monitors, but that's a great way to get some interesting movement in your sounds too. And then the last thing on the top, well, here actually I should probably touch the offset first. So we'll just actually go this way, and we'll make this bigger. So if you see the offset at 0, if you go to 180, it's basically just going to start halfway into, rather than starting at the beginning or this top of this wave, it's going to move to right here. So boom, it's just going to basically move the starting point of the wave. So anything in between, if you don't want to start at the very top of the wave, you can start a little down. If you go to 360, it's going to start in the same spot as 0. They're the same. So pretty much 180 is in dead center, and then 0 and 360 are the same, and then anything in between is kind of a variation of the starting point of the wave. The next thing I wanted to talk about here is the shape And the shape's kind of the same across the board for all of them, except for the noise is a little bit different. But with 0, it's just your normal shape, and you have your sine, you have your saw wave, you have a triangle, and then you have a noise, which is kind of just randomized. It'll be kind of all over. But the shape, essentially, just kind of turns it into blocks and squares it out, and it looks the same pretty much across the board with all of them, except for the noise is a little bit different. It does block them out, but because it's so random, it's not just straight squares. It still has some differences in it. So you can see as you go up, it'll kind of, that's what the shape tool does. It just adjusts the shape. So rather than having like a perfect sine wave, you can kind of round it a little, like almost like a round kind of square, and then as you just go up, it's just going to square out. So that's what that knob does. And like I said just a minute ago, you have different types of settings you can use for how you want it to pan. It basically essentially just takes the shape of these and then it'll move your sound the way these shapes are. The last thing I'm going to touch on in this is the normal, and then there's invert. It's just going to basically invert the wave. So we go back to, let's do a sine wave, and we'll just do this. So if you go normal, and if you go invert, it's just going to invert the wave and start opposite, and that's all that does. So that actually covers everything on this. There is, as I said with the other plugins, there is the on-off button, you have your hot swap button, which will bring up your presets, and you have your save button as well. Also, I guess just to note, if you can see it or you can't, like right here it says right and then left, so you know which way it's going to pan, so you can just kind of, it's color coded. And then to go back to this one more time, and just to kind of show you, I guess, how I got to this point. I just use Silent, and it's actually just initialized preset that I was gonna use. I never even did anything else to it. I just put the preset on, and I played out chords that followed the bass. And then I just did sevenths, and they're inverted and stuff. So I don't know if you don't play piano or don't know that kind of stuff. And inversions are chords, but they're different ways of playing them. Like, so it makes it more flowing. It's kind of hard. That's a whole different topic to go into. But basically, what I did was I played these chords out like so. Not those. These. Thought all this should be. Okay. And then I put an arpeggiator on it, and I had to set it to chord trigger, because if you don't, it'll just be like a normal arpeggio. But chord trigger will play the whole chord and just kind of arpeggiate it. And then I went in, I put on a stereo widening tool kind of deal, so it makes it wider. I'll just turn these off one at a time so you can kind of hear what's going on. So stereo widening kind of pulls it off to the sides, gets it out of the way more, and doesn't kind of mud up your mix. I took out the low end because I don't need it. It's just going to take up space and mud up the mix again. I put on the auto filter, and we've gone over the auto filter in previous tutorials. If you want to see anything about this, go back. I believe it may have been the first video of this audio series that I did this one. So I put on the LFO tool, and I have it up halfway, and it's starting to pan it, and it has some interesting sounds, but when they work together is where it kind of worked out and sounded nicer. So just to hear it before the auto pan is added on. And then with the auto pan. And then lastly, Convolution Reverb Pro. This comes with the Ableton Live Suite, because this is a Max for Live plugin. And then lastly, just compression to tighten it up and get it in the mix. So one more time all together. So that's it for this tutorial. If you have any questions or something, yeah, if anything doesn't make any sense or you have any ideas that you'd like to check out something I do for another tutorial, leave a comment below and have a good night.